and welcome to You Can't Make This Shit Up. I'm Joel Hoxley. I'm your host. I have Chardo Richardson, an absolute phenomenal guest to have. David is on his way to Chicago. His kids are graduating. I hope your kids are having a good graduation also. And You Can't Make This Shit Up is a conversation between a Democrat and a Republican. You'll have to figure out which one is which. So thank you very much. And Chardo, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Joel. Yes. And thank you for having me. And David, thank you for inviting me as well. I hope David's having safe travels to Chicago. My name is Chardo Richardson. I did run for Congress back in 2018 in Seminole County as a Democrat. Currently, I just completed my tenure as the executive director for the public school unions here in Seminole. And now I run my own firm where I do strategy and consulting.
Well, awesome. So let's kind of go. Dave and I usually like talk BS right now, so to get into the subject. But no, what did you think? I mean, you kept your eyes open, and you've seen the legislature. They only meet for a short period of time every year. What do you think of this last session?
Wow.
You can be honest.
I don't think the session is focused on the right things. If I am honest, I think that a lot of the bills that I'm aware of, I'm not aware of them all, of course. Right. I don't sit there, but the ones that I'm aware of don't seem to really move the needle in ways that we need to move the needle. Attacking unions, that doesn't help. I understand the reasoning, but I don't know that helps push America forward. That's where my concern is. How do we move forward? How do we fix spending? How do we fix housing? How do we fix employee wages? How do we fix the disconnect we have in this country? How do we give people hope again? Those are the things I would be doing as a politician. I'm not concerned about a party's agenda. I think that's the problem we have is parties have their agendas and what they want to push. We've forgotten that the people are the most important part of this, right?
Well, Chardo,
yeah.
Let's look at that because sure. you talk about the people, but your people didn't show up. They liked what Ron DeSantis had done. The largest victory we've had in a long time. I mean, the margin was incredible. And Hispanics, they came out, Latin Americans, they came out in force.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have liked something. And because they have a super majority, do you think that because that super majority goes to their heads that they just kind of went full force and just did whatever they wanted to?
No, I don't think that any, let me back up a little bit. I don't think any politician has ill intent. That I don't think. I think that they believe what they are enacting or the bill that they're voting on or the bill that they're introducing. I believe that they believe it's the right bill.
So you believe like I do, that they thought that this was the agenda that the people that elected them wanted. Exactly. And maybe it's not, and we'll find out at the next election.
We will.
That's what I say. Like, term limits are term limits when it comes to voting. Like I am not a term limit guy like you were, because I think the biggest problem with government is the people that stay up there that you can't get rid of.
Yeah, that is the problem.
Because all they do is if you had gotten elected and you went up there, Stephanie Murphy's staff would not have been your first choice.
No.
So you would have moved people around, but the people that would be available to you are coming from somebody else's office, somebody who either lost or the bureaucrats, but the people that are there. And I was one of them here locally, but those are the guys that run things. That's why the tempo never changes.
Correct.
The politician changes.
Correct.
And that costs us a lot of money each time that happens. So term limits to me is an expense that we don't need. We need to start looking at how long should somebody have a tenure in the House. Like then they should move over to the Senate if they want to continue with their bureaucratic hope.
Political career.
Yeah, and if they want to, then they can go to a department. They can go to the Department of Energy or whatever departments we have.
I absolutely
If you
agree.
moved people around, they'd be fresh. There'd be fresh ideas. But again, it's never going to happen because nobody wants to be forced into change. And And it's a sorry thing. So I'm impressed that DeSantis is probably going to veto a bill that I'm not a fan of because
Yeah.
I'm a local government kind of guy.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a
Yeah.
traditional Republican.
Right.
When you take the rights away from a chartered city or a municipality or a county, that pisses me off because
Yeah.
let them do their job to protect the citizens of their area, and then they should have the right to implement things. So the thing I'm talking about is rent control or rent stabilization.
Correct.
So Orange County wants rent stabilization, but they can't have it because it's against the law. So we found that out in the court system. But to not be able to at least try is a horrible thing. So they come up with a compromise. So they have a department here that works with the renter and with the landlord, and they kind of work together. So that whole department would have been thrown out because of this law that they were trying to pass. So when Republicans go up and say we're all about small government and they try to take something away,
Yeah.
for me it's weird. But why do we need, in your opinion, to tell a landlord what he's allowed to charge? That's what I really want to know, because that's what your side is saying.
Well, one, I wouldn't call it my side. So
I understand.
Before we get there, yes, I ran as a Democrat. I am not a big fan of the two-party system. I never was, but I actually don't agree with many Democrats. Like you have issues with Republicans, right? So, but I will say that rent control. Your question was, what gives us the right to tell landlords what they can charge? Yes, I agree with you. I think that's a bit of a reach and a stretch, right. And hopefully our governor will decide to veto that. To my understanding, he hasn't done so yet. He may do it this morning. I don't know.
Well, hopefully he does.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
the idea
yes.
is that he's not happy with it.
Yes, correct. So the issue you have is two, right? That I see. One, you have a landlord who purchased this home, puts their equity in it, puts their sweat into it. This may be their only sole source of income as well, but you cannot stop that person from doing what they want with their property. That's the overreach. It's you are now reaching into my property for the greater good of everyone else. And it's physical property. It's actually literal property, but everything is your property. Your speech, all of that is yours. It's
right.
It's you. So I do have strong issues with that because my wife and I own a rental property. We've never raised the rent because we have a great renter, and it's not in this state. We just are in a fortunate situation. Mm-hmm. If I was told as a landlord, oh, you can't go above this threshold, then I wouldn't be a landlord because I don't want to be limited outside of myself. I need to be the one that limits that. That said, the next side is there's a crisis.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, our politicians are handling crises by encroaching upon other people's rights. You don't have to do that. You can subsidize rents. We already do that in a lot of places. Right. But what we need to do in Florida is actually address the problem. Don't go around. The problem is housing. Here's the problem. Okay. There's not enough of it, and lower income people can't afford it. This is the problem. Don't go to the landlord. Don't go over here and blame the person that can't afford it because they don't have this. They may not have these same opportunities. They may not. That doesn't mean they all are in the same boat, but there's a good chance that a good percentage of your folks that can't find housing are having trouble because of different situations that they may be out of their control from their past. Meaning, for example, if they're a returning citizen, they got convicted of a felony, they now have to find a job, do all this stuff just right. to find a place to rent for their family. So there's challenges there. I think as legislators and as leaders and politicians, you should really be looking at solving the problem. Landlords are not the problem. They're raising their rents because their mortgages are going up and other right. things are going up. They are part of the help that would be coming in. If we subsidize those rents, you could do that. That's a possibility. I'm not very versed in what that would take at this moment, but if politicians in the legislature said, "Hey, let's look at subsidizing," I'm happy to volunteer and help you figure that out.
Well, I think the local government has the right. I do think they have the right to say, "Hey, look, if you own a home and you rent it out in our county, listen, we would want you to explain why you have a 9% increase, or if it increases more substantial. Why is that happening?" I mean, that asking that question, doing that. If I don't like to answer to somebody else, I sell my home, I get another home, and then I rent in a different location.
I actually would agree with that approach. That's I think a more reasonable approach that does not limit the landlord, but also helps the renter find a place to live. Right? I agree with that approach. If you tell me I can't charge more than $1,500 a month, and I have to give you a justification why, like you said, if I don't like it, then I don't have to rent. Right?
That's right.
But I may have good justification. My mortgage is 13.
I just replaced the roof for this person. They destroyed the kitchen. Right. I had to go. I had to put in a new fridge. I had to put in a new stove. I had to do all this for this one renter.
Right.
So I think that if this renter stays, I should be able to charge them the amount of money to compensate for the amount of damage they've done. I mean,
Joel,
sometimes it's damage and sometimes it's just poor management.
So we have a problem in this country that we aren't focusing on, right? And the problem that we have is it's not that we can't afford rents and all those things. It's that we believe that the pie is fixed. We think that people can only get so much. You've heard this before, right?
Oh yeah.
I was a negotiator for the last 7 years. When you think the pie is fixed, you limit your alternatives and you limit your options, and you don't think out of the side of the box like you just did. You don't, because you think it's fixed. And I think that we think it's fixed, but the pie can be as big as we want it to be. The government prints money. We can't expand a pie. Come on.
But that's the thing. We print money. That's what gives us inflation. And that's what's putting the Biden administration in jeopardy at a 36% approval rating. If DeSantis and Trump can beat the current president, that's an issue for the Democrats right now. What are we doing wrong? This debt ceiling thing is
stupid.
It's a twofold, two-party. It's two very stubborn parties.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree with the Republicans on this one for a change. But they keep saying we're going to default on our loan. We're not going to default on our loans. We are going to you're asking us to raise more spending. You're asking us for future spending. So if they say no, it doesn't cut off what we owe, because we still pay that. And the narrative that they send down your throat is, hey, if we don't do this, we can't. No, if we don't do this, we can't pay for Biden's, printing of money for this, and this. I had a conversation with somebody, and we were in a really good conversation, and they were running as a Democrat. And I said, they said, oh, what was it exactly? They mentioned that our state doesn't take federal dollars for Medicaid. I always get them back. I always get them.
Yeah, my wife works in it, and I don't even know.
So the state didn't take the state didn't take the subsidy, because the subsidy that they would have taken would have changed. We have a balanced budget. We would have then had that money. When the federal government cuts that money off, we have to make it up somewhere. And what are we going to do? Put an income tax in place? Or what are you going to tell the people? I took this money and jeopardized somebody. Some fool down the road is going to become the governor, and he's going to be sitting here with all this billions of dollars he has to come up with. What he's going to raise? He's going to raise the tourist tax. He's going to do this. But for me, that was a good call, because if the federal government said this is subsidized, period, that's a different story. Tell me to raise my speed limit, to lower my speed limit to 55 to get money from the federal government. That's what Jimmy Carter did.
Mhm.
Did it save gas? Did it help? Most likely it did. But now what are we driving?
Yeah.
We still have the same amount of we have
Right.
less fossil fuel, and we're now going 65, 75,
Yeah.
85 miles an hour on these highways.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
So
For
I
sure.
mean, you can't. Both sides need to come to the middle, and they have to kind of go, what are these different ideas? Like if I went to say, look, let's talk about minimum wage, right? Minimum wage is it's a robust conversation that nobody has ever delved in, that really dive into, because what happens is people are trying to get a living wage for jobs that aren't intended for living wage. And that's not the only job they can have. There should be a minimum wage for entry level jobs. There should be a minimum wage for living living wage jobs. Define those. Your company can go, hey, you know what? These are our entry level jobs. These are our, these are the ones that we want to make sure have a living wage, so they come to work every day, and then have an executive wage. Don't have, but don't those minimums. That's all they are. They're just a suggestion, really, because nobody's getting paid less than those. They've always been so low.
Yeah, they've always been low.
Like Ted Kennedy, he's the mastermind, but behind the minimum wage. And let me tell you, we would talk about it all the time. When I was up in Washington, he absolutely was the nicest guy in the world. And I'm from Massachusetts. He's supposed to be the enemy. But he was a kind guy, and he would allow conversation about the minimum wage. I said, the minimum wage hurts certain states.
Mm-hmm.
That's what every state should choose. What is the right rate for them? And I was always against a federal minimum wage, because it doesn't help those states that, hey, it doesn't cost a lot to live here. Why should I pay that? So I end up, I shouldn't be forced by the federal government to come up with a wage that doesn't fit my economy.
No, I get it. No, I'm a big fan. Government, stay out of my business.
Right.
I mean, if it's safety stuff, yes. If it's health stuff, yes. I understand that to an extent. And it's pay, I get to an extent. Because I think there's something in what you said that is, I don't want to say deeper. I don't want to say, but I think it's tied in, and you can't talk about one without the other. And that is when you were saying that we should have a minimum wage, and then we have a living wage, and then we have an executive wage. I don't disagree with you at all. The problem that we have and what you're seeing in the minimum wage fight is that employees are coming in and starting these positions at minimum wage, and they're not going up. There's no increase. So the only option for those employees is to increase the minimum wage. That's the only way you can do it. I've done it with the Seminole County Public School Union. Bus drivers were making this amount of money. It is low, and these are 25-year bus drivers. These are 30-year bus drivers making, less than 15 in cases. This is years back. Seminole County then bumps them up after negotiations to $16.50. They're like the higher paid in the state, so there's a reason behind it as well, right? And that goes to a lot of those social and demographic and opportunities that aren't there. So you can't say and I'm challenging you on this, because I think that while minimum wage, living wage, executive wage is great in theory, in practice, asking a business owner to say, when you hire somebody, you start them at minimum wage, and then when they are going to stay there for a long time, or they're going to make this job a home, you need to move them into the living wage realm. Well, that's too subjective, one, and allows a lot of bias by the employer. And two, I don't know that it's going to solve the problem. The problem is opportunity. If I don't go to, let's just use a made up example that probably isn't reality now, but it was definitely reality for me growing up, right? If I don't go to college and I just have a high school diploma, I'm limited in how much I'm going to make and where I'm going to go, right? That's not as true today, because there's so much opportunity that has to be taken and you have to go get, but it's there. I think that if you recognize that some people can't get anything but a minimum wage job. I just helped a returning citizen yesterday, literally, find a position. We're helping this guy. My beautiful wife has a nonprofit she does for children. We're helping the family, but she can't continue to help. I talked to the young man. He's a father of 3. He just got home from a sentence, carried out his debt to society. He can't find a job. We found him a job. They're going to pay him minimum wage. He's 35 years old, right? They're going to pay him a wage.
Okay.
He's 35 years old. He's got to provide for his family. He's got to work up, right? That's okay to work up, but also understand that sometimes minimum wage is all people can get. So if you're going to limit those folks, you got to be aware of that.
I served in the United States Army for 15 years. I
Probably
loved
$200
I loved every moment of it. When I started, we got paid jack. And Ronald, Carter gave the lowest increase, and then Jimmy Carter is no longer president. Ronald Reagan comes in, gives us he says, you know what? This is what it costs to live. So he gives us like almost a 5 or 4 point something % increase to get us at least where we could compete with people on Social Security. So it was a powerful thing. So if ever we get into Ronald Reagan conversations, like you'll be able to talk to me. You'll be able to hit me with anything, because I will, like, he's, my God.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for him, because he came in and he did something totally different. He came in and he said, this is what I want to do. I mean, he took the guy that called it voodoo economics and made him the vice president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Smart.
this is a very smart person. They tried to convince him to take Gerald Ford as his vice president so they could have a co-presidency. Like, wait a minute, you really think I'm a dumb actor?
Yeah. I grew up under Reagan. I'm not a fan of him. I'm a fan of him as a leader. I think he's an amazing leader. He's got all of it. He will make hard decisions. The one thing that left a bitter taste in my mouth for Reagan is the war on drugs. It really, really hurt all his greatness to me. And I'm just speaking personally.
But now let's walk back on that for just a moment.
Yeah.
The war on drugs, was it Reagan or was it Bush? It was Nancy Reagan came up with just say no.
DARE. Yep. I remember.
She came up with a lot of good programs, but it was Joe Biden in the Senate who led the charge to bring the penalties up and to do all these different things on drugs, which basically hurt the African-American community. But now he's president of the United States by the same people, voted by the same people that he screwed back then. I blame it on the fact that we focused the wrong way.
We did.
We focused the wrong way.
Right.
Just say no on drugs is a good idea.
Yep.
But it's education in the school system. But we decided we wanted to punish. Like, punishment is always the best thing. And we always get blamed as Republicans because we're about jails and this and that. No, this was led by the Democrats. Like, you got to look back at your history. I'm a big history buff. I'm a Republican because we started OSHA. I'm a Republican because we started the EPA. I am a Republican because we eliminated slavery. That's the only reason the party was existing. So when people start calling names and everything, I say, hold on for a second. You want to talk about the switch. Well, I can't be a Democrat because of the things the Democrats have done. And if I couldn't be a Republican because what we're doing now, if that's what you're saying we're turning into, then something's wrong with our system.
There is something wrong with our system.
And we've
always had a problem.
But when it comes to elections, our problem is entertainment. And I'm not going to say, like, entertainers get paid way too much money. They captivate us. We now can create somebody on the internet as a star in no time. People are giving advice to my children that have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm like, where'd you get that? I got that on TikTok. I mean, it's all about that. Why do you think Donald Trump can say, I'm not a typical politician. I'm a businessman and I'm going to speak my mind. The Republicans wanted somebody. We felt like we were getting railroaded. We kept being run over. And finally they get somebody with a backbone who starts taking people out, and no hesitation, calling them names. I mean, Ronald Reagan would roll in his grave because of the 11th commandment. Thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican. But that's all we do now. That's all we do now.
That's unfortunate.
We are really quick to, be the ones yelling and screaming. I say you always lose the debate. Always. When who lost the debate when the first person calls you a name or tries to insinuate that you're not part of the planet.
I would say what you said, you unpacked it. You're right. You're dead right. You're spot on. I would agree with you completely. Absolutely. I do think there's something really important that comes to mind just listening to you. And that is Booker T. Washington. No man can hold another man down in a ditch and not stay there with him. The war on drugs, I say that about Reagan because I grew up under Reagan. I grew up in the DARE program. And it wasn't until I started to look at what was actually happening with drugs and what it was doing to the communities and the world and all of us that I really realized that it's not about criminalizing drugs. We've hurt all of us. This is really stupid if you think about it. Just walk with me here.
I'm with you.
No man can hold one man down in the ditch and not stay there with him. So you criminalize marijuana, you criminalize, drug use and drug stuff. I understand criminalizing it, but then you have these exorbitant differences in crimes based on geography and opportunity, all this. A bag of cocaine is not being sold by the young man in the inner city. It's usually a crack rock by the young man in the inner city, right?
Okay.
But look where it's led us. We have mass incarceration, which costs us $30,000. I'm guesstimating $30,000 per person to keep in jail for a drug problem. We've hurt our children. We're losing so much of our youth. People are zombies out there. I don't know if you're walking around, but I am. And there's zombies out there. And this all stems from the war on drugs. To me, it is completely from the war on drugs. You know why? Because you declared war on America when you declare the war on drugs.
Well, I think what what Bush was trying to do, I hate when we use war on anything.
You're
because
right.
War is a very tough word. Like when we introduced the war on terror, I was in the Army at the time, and it was Air Force. Colombia. It was South America. We were trying to prevent them from letting it in. So they considered it a war on terror. I mean, on drugs, because that's what we were supposed to be doing. We were supposed to be going. We took a freaking leader out of Panama because he was sending so many drugs into our country. We went and jumped in there. We fought a war or a conflict simply because we wanted to stop the drug coming in. Then it goes crazy. So you now say, okay, Reagan, but it was Bush. Bush did it. He comes out strong, boom, done. We're playing music to try to get Noriega to come out of the Vatican embassy. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Like we had a physical war, so the term works there, but it should have stopped. It should have been okay. Once we did this, once we secure our borders, once we start locating where it's coming from in Colombia, where it's coming from in Panama, that's what we should have been doing. But all of a sudden we decide now we got to go after the easy targets, the people that are in our country. And I'm a big supporter of, what our president Trump did was he said this is bullshit. And he went in and he did the first reform of it. Now of the laws that were put in place for the low amounts of drugs.
Oh no, the Biden Obama administration were the ones that originally brought crack cocaine and cocaine as this in the schedule. They brought them closer together so that it wasn't disproportionate. Basically, you would get in 10
Yeah, but
10 years for a crack rock and 10 years
but
for
the
a kilo
thing that
of
would
cocaine.
but the thing that went
Yeah.
under the radar is the fact that many African Americans, many people that were, under this, this 3 strikes you're out laws and all that stuff.
Clinton, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was done. It was done. It's done. Like now,
Yeah,
these
you
minimums,
still have
like
to
the
remember that.
minimums, get rid of the minimums, right? What is it? Oh, I'm sorry, son. You peed outside. You got drunk. You got drunk and got arrested the second time. But since you had a sex offense because you peed outside, and now this time you happen to get pulled over and you had a gun and you didn't have a permit, because you had the gun, I can only sentence you for 25 years.
Yeah.
Wait. Which one was the worst one? The peeing outside, the intoxication, or having a gun without a permit? Like those 3 things in themselves warrant 25 years in prison. I mean, think about that. Now, the guy that's going to 25 years in prison who raped a woman and then robbed a place and then had the gun in a felony, which we can make that one up too, kill somebody.
Yeah.
But he only gets 25.
Right.
The minimum I can give you is 25 years.
Right.
I can't give you any less than that. The guy needs life, but you now have a minimum that was intended for him, right? Don't let him out before 25 years. And then you have this other gentleman. I call him a gentleman because he did bad decisions, young decisions.
Sure.
Okay. Peeing outside. It shouldn't be a sex offense. It's classified as a sex offense. Why? Like, we are so strict on things. We have no common sense when we put these laws in place. And we don't. I'm always going to say this, and I'm going to kind of wrap up. Equal is not fair, and fair is not equal. And we have to determine which one we want to do when we place these laws in there. And this has been, you can't make this shit up. I think we've covered a lot more than
we covered a lot of ground.
What we did. But listen, you got to watch this episode because, listen, this is common sense and communication between 2 parties. Thank you very much, Chardo.
Thank you.
And John, thank you for producing.